Three times in history, ships sank off the coast of Wales with almost everyone lost. Except, each time, the lone survivor was named Hugh Williams. Evidence exists for three different disasters, across centuries, with one name echoing back from the jaws of death. Could a name truly hold such power over destiny? Does your name control your life isn't just a question. In the next 30 minutes, you'll see 18 cases where fate seems obsessed with names. From executions with eerie repetition to balloon journeys defying all logic. If patterns like this are hidden everywhere, what does that mean for us? And just how much of our lives might already be written? On December 5th, 1664, the waters off Anglesey turned deadly. A ship, battered by the Menai Straits' unpredictable currents, went down with 81 souls aboard. When rescuers searched the wreckage, only one man was left alive. His name was Hugh Williams. That should have been the end of it, a tragic footnote in maritime history. But the strait wasn't finished. Exactly 121 years later, on December 5th, 1785, another vessel capsized in those same waters. Again, a single survivor. Again, his name was Hugh Williams. If that sounds impossible, consider what happened in 1820. On August 5th, yet another shipwreck in the same channel, and once more, the lone survivor answered to Hugh Williams. Three disasters, 3 centuries, 3 men with the same name escaping death while everyone else perished. Official records for the first and third wrecks have never surfaced, leaving only the 1785 incident with some archival trace. Still, the story grew. Chroniclers called it an act of providence, a curse, even a sign that the strait itself knew the name it would spare. Skeptics point out that both Hugh and Williams were common in North Wales, and with so many ships and so many storms, some strange pattern was bound to appear. But even with the odds stretched by history and statistics, the legend refuses to die. Each retelling adds a new layer of awe. Was it fate? Was it just numbers playing tricks? Or does a name sometimes hold the power to pull someone from the jaws of disaster? For the people of Anglesey, the name Hugh Williams became more than just a label. It became a living question, one that still haunts the strait to this day. On February 13, 1746, the city of Toulouse prepared for a spectacle both grim and final. The crime was patricide, one of the darkest stains in French law. The accused, a young man named Jean-Marie Dubarry, stood before the court, his name already infamous in the city's whispered conversations. Details of the case are lost to time. The centuries have not preserved the trial transcripts or the full story of what led a son to murder his own father. But the sentence was clear. Justice would be delivered by the blade of the guillotine, a new machine whose cold efficiency was already legendary. As the day broke, crowds gathered in the square, drawn by equal parts outrage and curiosity. Executioners readied the scaffold. Dubarry, just 23, was led from his cell through the narrow stone corridors of the prison. Some said he walked with a strange calm, as if resigned to a fate written long before his birth. The guillotine fell before noon. Witnesses described the event as swift, almost routine, yet the air in Toulouse felt heavy, as though the city itself was holding its breath. No family came to claim the body. His name, Jean-Marie Dubarry, was entered into the city's death register, a single line in the annals of punishment. The newspapers of the time offered little more than a passing mention, but in the years that followed, the story of Dubarry's crime and execution grew in the telling. And for those who believe in patterns, the story of Dubarry was only half finished. 100 years later, on February 13, 1846, Toulouse braced itself for a scene that felt like history repeating in slow motion. Once again, the charge was patricide. Once again, the condemned stood before the city's judges bearing the name Jean-Marie Dubarry. The date matched down to the day. The crime, a son accused of murdering his father, mirrored the earlier case so closely that even the most skeptical onlookers felt a chill. But this time, the city's records are silent. No court dockets survive, no prison logs, no official death notice. All that remains are the retellings, echoes in 19th century moralist texts and whispered warnings in the back rooms of Toulouse. Some claimed it was a cautionary tale, a warning passed down to frighten wayward sons. Others insisted it was true, that fate had circled back for a second act using the same name as its instrument. In the streets, the name Jean-Marie du Barry took on a spectral quality. To bear it was to risk a shadow, a sense that destiny might be waiting with a blade and a date already chosen. But the deeper scholars searched, the more the details seemed to blur. Was there ever a second du Barry, or had the city's memory played a trick, weaving legend from fear and the hunger for patterns? In the summer of 2001, a 10-year-old girl named Laura Buxton stood in her backyard in Staffordshire, England, holding a red balloon. On a slip of paper, she carefully wrote her name and address, then let the balloon drift into the sky. Most balloons disappear without a trace, but this one traveled 140 miles south before landing in the garden of another girl. Her name? Also Laura Buxton. She was 10 years old, too. Same birthday, same straight brown hair, even their pets, guinea pigs and black Labradors, matched. At first, both families thought it had to be some kind of prank, but after a few exchanged letters, curiosity took over. The two Lauras arranged to meet in person. When they finally stood face to face, the similarities only deepened. They wore nearly identical clothes, were the same height, and even shared the same favorite hobbies. The story made headlines across Britain, with newspapers calling it beyond belief and fate at work. Statisticians weighed in, calculating the odds of this happening as somewhere between 1 in several million and pure impossibility. Yet there they were, two Laura Buxtons, brought together by a twist of wind and chance, or something else. Was it just a statistical fluke, or a sign that some names are meant to cross paths? For the girls, it felt like destiny. For everyone else, it remains a case that defies logic and invites wonder. How often does the universe write such a perfect script just for fun? In 1907, the world's largest schooner set sail from Philadelphia, her 7 masts towering above the waves. She was named the Thomas W. Lawson, after the Boston tycoon and author who had made a fortune predicting financial disasters, and who had written a novel warning of the dangers lurking on Friday the 13th. The ship was meant to be a marvel of modern engineering, but her reputation carried a shadow. Sailors whispered that a vessel named for a man who tempted fate was bound to meet it. On December 13, 1907, a Friday, the Thomas W. Lawson fought through a winter storm off the coast of Cornwall. Her cargo, over 58,000 barrels of oil. As night fell, hurricane-force winds battered her hull. The captain tried to anchor, but the sea had other plans. In the early hours, the schooner struck the treacherous rocks of the Scilly Isles. Rescue boats were launched, but the waves were merciless. Out of a crew of 17, only 2 survived. The rest, including the captain, vanished beneath the surface. When news reached the United States, newspapers like the Boston Globe couldn't resist the irony. The ship named for the man who warned of Friday the 13th had gone down on that very date. Salvagers later recovered the ship's bell and a few battered timbers, mute reminders of a prophecy fulfilled. Coincidence? Maybe. But when a name, a date, and a disaster line up so perfectly, it's hard not to wonder if fiction sometimes writes its own ending. In August 1911, the Louvre in Paris awoke to chaos. The Mona Lisa, the world's most famous painting, had vanished. The man behind the theft was quickly identified, Vincenzo Peruggia, an Italian handyman who had worked at the museum. He had hidden inside overnight, slipped the painting under his coat, and walked out the next morning. For 2 years, the Mona Lisa remained lost. Peruggia kept it hidden in a trunk, convinced he was returning a stolen treasure to Italy. When he was finally caught in Florence, police records and court transcripts sealed his name in history. Newspapers across Europe called it the crime of the century. But the name Peruggia didn't fade with time. Decades later, rumors surfaced of another art thief, this time in Paris, this time in 1932, and again, the name was Vincenzo Peruggia. Whispers of a second arrest, a second Italian caught red-handed in a museum, began to circulate in tabloids and books of oddities. Yet, when historians combed through French police files and court records, they found nothing. No second Peruggia, no matching arrest. The story, it turned out, was a shadow, born from the echo of a name already infamous for its audacity. Still, the legend stuck. For some, the name Perugia became a curse, whispered in museum corridors and criminal folklore. One man, one name, forever linked to the world's most notorious art heist. It's easy to see why people wanted the pattern to repeat. Names have a way of haunting history, even when the facts refuse to line up. Coincidence? Or just the universe playing tricks with our need for patterns and meaning? On July 28, 1900, King Umberto I of Italy stepped into a small restaurant in Monza for an ordinary meal. The owner greeted him, but something was off. The two men stared at each other, faces frozen in surprise. They looked like twins, same height, same build, same thick mustache. But the similarities didn't end there. As they talked, each detail came to light. Both were named Umberto, both born on March 14, 1844 in the same Italian town. Both married women named Margherita. The restaurant itself. It had opened on the very day Umberto was crowned king. The king, a man used to ceremony and protocol, found himself unsettled by this living mirror. Patrons and staff whispered about fate, destiny, or perhaps a warning. The next day, July 29th, the king attended a public event. In the crowd, an anarchist named Gaetano Bresci raised a pistol and fired. Umberto fell, fatally wounded, the first Italian monarch to die by assassination. At nearly the same moment, according to later accounts, the restaurateur was shot and killed in his own establishment, the victim of a stray bullet during a quarrel. Two men, born on the same day, carrying the same name, living parallel lives, both meeting violent ends within hours of each other. Italian memoirs called it the day the mirror shattered. Whether fact or folklore, the legend of the two Umbertos lingers in the shadows of Monza, a story that blurs the line between coincidence and destiny. Was it a cosmic joke or a sign that some names are written with fate's own pen? In 1611, the King James Bible rolled off English presses, its verses soon echoing through churches and courts alike. But tucked inside Psalm 46, some say, lies a secret signature, one that belongs to the bard himself. William Shakespeare at the time was 46 years old. Count 46 words in from the start of Psalm 46, and you land on the word shake. Now, count backward, 46 words from the end. There it is. Spear, shake, spear. The coincidence is almost too perfect. Shakespeare's fingerprints hidden in plain sight, or just an accident of translation. The official records from the team of scholars who crafted the King James Bible make no mention of any such code. No marginal notes, no sly winks to the playwright. Yet, for centuries, believers in hidden messages and literary riddles have pointed to this passage as proof that names can slip between the lines of history, leaving clues for those who look closely enough. Was it a tribute by friends and admirers, a bit of playful numerology, or just the random poetry of language? The mystery endures, as stubborn as the bard's own legacy. Maybe it's nothing. Or maybe, and in the world of names and fate, even Holy Scripture isn't immune to a little wordplay. In the chaos of the Western Front, a British private named Edwin Teare found himself face to face with the impossible. It was 1915, and the trenches near Ypres were a maze of mud and wire. Teare was crouched in a shallow foxhole when a German bullet ripped through the air, heading straight for his chest. But fate had other plans. The bullet struck the pocket watch in his tunic, shattering glass and metal, yet stopping cold. When Teare examined the watch, he saw the path of the bullet had passed directly through the spot where his name was engraved, E. Teare, etched by his own hand before the war. The diary entry he wrote that night was simple, alive by a hair and by my own name. Soldiers in his unit called it a miracle, a sign that sometimes a name can serve as armor. The watch, battered but intact, became his talisman for the rest of the war. Coincidence? Or did destiny know exactly where to aim and where to stop? Lucky wasn't just a name, it was a running joke in the neighborhood. This scruffy mutt had survived everything. Cars, floods, even a house fire that left most of the block in ashes. Each time disaster struck, Lucky walked away, tail wagging as if fate had him on a leash. When old age finally caught up with him, his owner buried him under the big oak tree, marking the spot with a simple stone that read, "Lucky he lived up to his name." That should have been the end of the story. But the very next night, a thunderstorm rolled through. Lightning struck the grave, shattering the headstone into pieces. The local paper called it an irony that defies logic. Some neighbors laughed, saying fate couldn't resist one last punchline. Others shook their heads, wondering if the universe just wanted to remind everyone. Sometimes, destiny has a sense of humor. What are the odds? In the twilight of the Western Roman Empire, a boy named Romulus Augustulus was crowned emperor. His name alone seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Romulus, the wolf-raised founder of Rome, and Augustus, the revered first emperor, joined in a single title. But Augustulus means Little Augustus, a name that almost hints at diminishment, a shadow of former glory. When Romulus Augustulus took the throne in 475 AD, the empire was already splintered. Barbarians pressed at the borders, the treasury was empty, and the legions were restless. He ruled for barely a year before being deposed by Odoacer, a Germanic general, in 476. History often calls this the end of ancient Rome. Chroniclers couldn't help but marvel at the symmetry. Rome began with a Romulus and an Augustus, and ended with a boy who bore both names. Coincidence? Or was the fate of an empire written in the very name of its last ruler? Even now, historians debate whether destiny has a sense of irony, or if we simply find meaning where we need it most. In August 2002, as floodwaters swallowed towns across Central Europe, a small bakery in Austria stood no chance. The owner, Thomas Strom, watched helplessly as the current surged through his shop, sweeping away ovens, flour, and years of hard work. The local newspaper, Die Presse, couldn't resist the headline, "Strom swept away by the Strom." In German, Strom means current or stream, a name that suddenly felt like a prophecy. Neighbors shook their heads, calling it fate or nominative determinism, that strange idea where a name seems to shape a person's destiny. For Thomas, it was more than a clever pun. The flood didn't care about irony, but the story stuck. People across Austria remembered the baker whose name matched the force that took everything from him. Was it just a cruel joke by nature or something deeper? A sign that sometimes our names are more than just labels. When disaster and identity collide so perfectly, it's hard not to wonder if fate has a sense of humor. In June 1901, Montreal's wealthy Redpath family gathered at their mansion for what should have been an ordinary evening. Ada Redpath, the matriarch, was found dead in her bedroom, a gunshot wound staining the sheets. Her son Clifford, just 26, was discovered nearby, a bullet in his chest, the revolver still warm in his hand. The official verdict called it a murder-suicide, but the details never added up. The coroner's report contradicted itself, wavering on the sequence of shots and the positions of the bodies. Newspapers seized on the family's name. Redpath, blood on the floor, red in the name, a path that seemed to run straight through tragedy. Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered about family secrets, others about a curse that clung to the Redpath name. Even the Montreal Gazette couldn't resist the symbolism, dubbing the case a path painted red. More than a century later, the unanswered questions still echo through the city's archives. Was it fate, coincidence, or something written into the very letters of their name? In Montreal, the Redpath mansion stands as a silent witness, its doorways still shadowed by the mystery that refuses to fade. Jim Lewis grew up in Lima, Ohio, always sensing there was something missing but never quite knowing what. Adopted at birth, he lived an ordinary life. Until, at age 39, a phone call changed everything. On the other end was Jim Springer, also adopted, also from Ohio, and also searching for answers. When the two finally met in 1979, the similarities piled up fast. Both had been named James by their adoptive families. Both married women named Linda, divorced, and remarried women named Betty. Each had a son named James Allen, spelled exactly the same way. Both worked as part-time deputy sheriffs, drove Chevrolets, smoked Salem cigarettes, and enjoyed woodworking as a hobby. Even their childhood dogs shared the same name. Toy, psychologist Thomas Bouchard, leading a study at the University of Minnesota, documented every uncanny parallel. The Jim twins' lives seemed to run on the same invisible track, as if their names had set the course years before they ever met. Coincidence? Genetics? Or was something deeper at play? A name acting like a secret script, guiding two strangers toward the same choices? For the Jims, it was like looking into a mirror that stretched across decades. For everyone else, it was the kind of story that makes you question where fate ends and identity begins. In 1898, Illinois police booked two men for horse theft. Both gave the same name, Robert Lincoln. Both shared the same birthday. No family connection, no shared address, just two strangers, arrested on the same day for the same crime by the same officers. Local papers called it a glitch in the matrix, a moment when history seemed to echo with a single name. Years later, London's Whitechapel district would witness a name crossing that felt even more ominous. On the night of September 29, 1888, Catherine Eddowes was picked up for drunkenness. When the police asked her name, she gave a false one, Mary Kelly. Hours after Eddowes was released, Jack the Ripper struck again. His final victim, murdered in her own room, was actually named Mary Kelly. The coincidence sent chills through Scotland Yard. Police logs from that night record the alias, but offer no explanation for why Eddowes chose that name. Was it a random choice, or did she sense something lurking in the London fog? In both cases, the name seemed to run ahead of fate, as if destiny itself was working from a script. Coincidence? Maybe, but when names line up with crime and tragedy so precisely, it's hard not to wonder what else might be written in the margins. In the late 1970s, John Lennon was living in London, enjoying a rare stretch of quiet before his return to the spotlight. His address at the time? Chapman Street. Years later, in 1980, Lennon would be shot outside the Dakota Building in New York by Mark David Chapman, a name that would forever be linked to tragedy. Fans who learned about Lennon's old address after his death couldn't shake the feeling that fate had left a signature in advance, hiding the killer's name in plain sight. Coincidence? Maybe, but when the past and future line up so neatly, it's hard not to wonder if destiny keeps a ledger. Edgar Allan Poe, master of the macabre, published a novel in 1838 with a plot that seemed pure invention. In the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, shipwrecked sailors, starving and desperate, draw lots. The unlucky loser is a cabin boy named Richard Parker. He is killed and eaten by his shipmates, a dark twist even for Poe. But 46 years later, in 1884, the yacht Mignonette sank in the South Atlantic. The survivors, adrift for weeks, faced the same horrific choice. The victim? A cabin boy named Richard Parker. The trial of Dudley and Stevens became a sensation, but the name haunted everyone who read the transcript. Fiction blurred into reality with a precision that defies logic. Was it just a random echo, or did Poe tap into a pattern much deeper than chance? When names resurface across decades and continents, repeating the same dark script, the line between coincidence and fate grows thin. How many more stories are waiting, written in the margins of history, just one name away from coming true? Across 3 centuries, records show that 3 shipwrecks in the Menai Strait left only one survivor each time, all named Hugh Williams. In other cases, like the 2 Laura Buxtons or the Jim twins, official documents confirm parallel lives shaped by shared names. Yet for legends such as the double execution of Jean-Marie du Barry, no primary court records have been found to fully verify the tale. Names have echoed through crime reports, royal archives, and even a King James Bible passage. But historians still debate if patterns like these reveal fate or statistical flukes. While some details remain lost in missing files or disputed stories, the evidence proves that names have shaped real events, from courtroom dockets to gravestones. Whether these coincidences are pure chance or something more, the facts invite us to reconsider the hidden influence of names. The documented stories endure, leaving the mystery unsolved but undeniably real.